And it definitely depicts a God that is completely different from what Jesus and even Paul is preaching about.
But isn't Jesus God in the Old Testament?
Oh,
I
this
mean,
is one
he's
where
God, right?
well, this is one where I'm like,
According to you, know.
yeah, this is one where I'm like vacillating a little bit because Paul was the one that started the whole Trinity concept.
Thank you.
Jesus says, the he who believes in me believes in the one who sent me, and that seems two different beings there.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah. So, okay,
so
great. So that leads to the next question then. I think you're
yeah.
about to go into it, but I just want to ask,
Hmm.
so what is the Trinity concept to you? How do you rationalize it?
Oh,
Or
how do
maybe
I rationalize it?
more
This
direct
that
question, more
hmm.
direct to make it a little easier. Do you believe Jesus is God himself?
I'm on my journey to deconstructing Joseph. That's a very loaded question.
Yeah.
But I'll do my best to answer it. So, going back to what you're asking with like, what is the
Oh,
Trinity concept? That was something that I really struggled with when I was growing up. So I read C.S. Lewis's book called Mere Christianity. Because I thought like, oh, this guy's got it. He's got all the answers, like he's the Paul of Pauls. Like he's explaining what Paul was talking about. And, Paul's great. So I'm going to read what this guy has to say. And, I love his books, but like I look back and the explanation of what C.S. Lewis says is like, oh, it's so confusing. It's like he used an analogy of books, I think, and how like they're all like their position explains
I think I've heard
how
that.
right,
Like
it's very
they're all
strange.
stacked, but they're one book or something like that,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
it's so weird. And I kind of just like put that on the back burner thinking I'll eventually get it. I'll have an epiphany when I'm older about this and I'll finally understand what it means. But I look at it now and I'm thinking that doesn't make any sense because they're, if they are one, then why is the distinction made at all? Like why does, Jesus why is Jesus referred to as the Son of God? Why is like the Spirit of God? Like why are all of these things so specifically separated if they're supposed to be all the same thing? And also the fact that, in Revelations it says that he sits at the right hand of God. Like I thought they're the same person. So
Right.
what's
It's
going on?
confusing, isn't it?
It is
Yeah.
very confusing. So that's another huge problem with Paul that I have. I mean, it sounds nice. The Trinity sounds very nice. It sounds fun and like it makes things seem more like magical, but it creates another problem because it's just so contradictory.
Yeah, and if you look in the Bible, there's nowhere that it says Trinity or that these three are
In
one God.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
except for,
Yeah.
John, was it John 5:7, which was, we know now that it was added on later because in the Codex St. Atticus, it's
Yeah.
not in there. It's not
Yeah.
in
It's
there.
not
And then
included.
now,
Yeah.
centuries later, you see it put in there. So it shows that someone had an agenda. So it was like, oh, we need that. We can't you
Yeah.
can't explain this Trinity. Let's add it into the Bible, and that will just end everything. This is
Yeah, but I blame it on Paul because like all his writings came out first, and the fact that the
yeah,
Gospels don't address it, it's like, well, who's
yeah. So
right,
so
right?
they couldn't. Yeah, they couldn't like, oh, what do we do? Paul is saying
Yeah.
this. The the Gospels are saying this. We need to figure something out to
hmm
make it all coincide. So
hmm
that's my opinion. They put that
Yeah.
verse in there.
They just added it because of his doctrine, and it's that's why it's just so toxic because evangelicals get taught it so religiously. Like
Yeah,
we're
and they
taught
defend
more.
it like with these crazy analogies. Like
Yeah, yeah, and the whole excuse of like, well, it's God breathed. I mean,
that
hmm.
isn't that Paul?
Yeah, that's again another like Paul verse.
And
It's just an
that's God
excuse.
breathed is before the Gospels. So I could say
Yeah,
that everything after me is God breathed, and then people can write something
exactly,
and say it's God
exactly.
breathed. So,
That's it's such a problem with him. He's like the black sheep of the family, but for some reason, all of Christianity would rather follow him than the actual teachings. It's wild.
yeah, yeah, pretty much summarize it. But how about I want to get a little bit more into Trinity because it's interesting what you said.
Yeah, of
How
course.
about Jesus being the Son of God? Do you agree
Hmm.
with that? You think he's literally a physical Son of God, or is it more metaphorical? Another tough one.
That's a tough one because again, like I'm in the midst of my deconstruction, so it's like
Yeah, no
that's
worries,
a
no worries.
question that I would have had to come up against already. I want to I would say, and I know like we disagree on this, that he is the son of God, but he
Yeah,
doesn't
no worries. You can
specifically
disagree with
say
me. Please disagree.
but he again, he doesn't specifically say it. You know what I mean? He says like that he's sent by God, but it's put on him by his disciples that you are the son of God. He only says like I am who you say I am, but he doesn't specifically say like, yeah, I am the son of God. He just says like you believe in me. That seems to be like the only thing he
Yeah, but I
cares
guess the
about.
typical Christian or evangelical argument would say that, well, if he didn't deny it, that must mean he
I mean,
was.
accepting it, yeah, and that's like a whole obstacle that I need to work through.
Yeah, but
Um,
it's I mean to me it's just like a being a son of God is just being a very righteous person, you know,
yeah,
like you
because
see
I
a
mean, you
lot
look
of the
at
prophets are sons of God, right?
well, you look at
David and
Abraham, and Abraham
yeah.
literally sits on the other side of God. So, like, for
Oh,
Abraham to sit on one side, and for or like the whole reference of like, oh, he's gonna go and once he dies, he's gonna go to Abraham's bosom. Like, clearly, like Abraham is seen as someone like very, very, very close to God, like sitting like right next to him. So if Jesus is on the other side, I mean,
yeah,
I think what you're saying, it's a really good argument for it. Yeah, that's something that I'm working through.
that's cool. Maybe we could save it for like the next one, maybe in like a couple weeks. You do your
Yeah, maybe when I've
research.
deconstructed a little bit more, we can come
Yeah,
back to it.
I think we can get into maybe I don't know. Well, Trinity is we both disagree with it, so I don't even think we need to get into
Yeah.
that.
No,
Um,
I don't like evangelicals love to cling to it because this is a
I don't
whole
know
nother
why.
thing.
Why?
It's almost like uh, I hate to say it, but it's like Greek mythology where it's just so magical and like fantastical sounding that it just makes it seem so cool.
So it's like
But
an
it may
emotional kind of thing.
right, but it's
And
really
it's also
scary.
Paul. They're just so into Paul that they just have to accept everything, right?
Yeah, yeah, they absolutely do. And it's because he's so specific. That's why they don't know how to have that kind of discernment where um making their own minds up on issues like they need to have someone spoon feed it to them instead of coming up with it on their own based on like, okay, I have to love God and love people, period. Like whatever my faith is, like it should surround that. So why are all these other things, why do they have to be specified? It's just really weird. But yeah, I think it's because it's just like a lack of being able to discern, being able to make up your own decisions regarding like all the issues that Paul brings up. That's why evangelicals just flock to him, and that's why preachers love using him because he is so specific. Um,
Okay, so to add on that, so without
mhm,
Paul, let's say without Paul,
yeah.
how would you go about with all these other issues then? If it's really that vague, when like Jesus's wordings are really, you know, I get it, it's all about love and stuff like that. But how about all these
Hmm.
other issues that Paul touches on? How do you go
I
about
mean,
it?
there's the issue of predestination, right? Like, are people predestined to go to heaven or go to hell? Because he makes it sound like God has already chosen those people. So then, like, what's the point of preaching the gospel? And like that's where Calvinism, that whole shoot off of Calvinism started, was because of that one section of Paul's teachings. And it's like he's the reason why so many different denominations even came to be. And it's like all of these different like things that he brings up, and it's like, why?
Yeah, all these different sects and everything. If it was just, it'd be a lot more united if it was just following the.
Absolutely. Like if there were no Paul teachings at all, I mean, I'm sure someone would come up with some reason to disagree with something and create a new denomination. But I don't think there would be as many if Paul's teachings weren't there. That's my belief. I don't know.
Do you think it's enough guidance that what Jesus said? That's. I mean,
Should have been enough for the Jewish people when they had the Ten Commandments, but clearly it wasn't. They had to
no.
create their own laws. So obviously, like, I don't, with people back then, I don't think it would have been enough for them either. But that's because people need more. They need things to be spoon fed for them instead of thinking for themselves.
But since Paul's main objective is getting the Gentiles in, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So without Paul, what is the mission for the Gentiles? What is their purpose?
Like, whether they
What
should be
what did
included or
Jesus
not,
tell
or
what did Jesus tell the Gentiles to do? Because he was preaching a lot to like the Jews, to my understanding. So
yeah, mostly.
so what's the mission for like you and me and then the rest of the Gentiles? Like what is our purpose? Like without Paul, that's kind of get lost, doesn't it?
You could say that. I mean, you could also use what Jesus says at the end of Matthew, saying like, to all the disciples, preach to all nations, like all people. So it does include Gentiles in there. It's just that Paul specifically picked the group of Gentiles was like his mission. And I think that's great. I think that's a good thing that he did that, and that, he went to Asia Minor, he like went to all of these different locations. I think it definitely spread, Christianity to like faster than what the disciples maybe would have been able to do. It's just the way he went about it, like the way he taught it is just, that's really just the thing that I disagree with. I don't disagree that like Gentiles should be included. I think absolutely that's what Jesus said too. But like the guys Paul uses to do that is just so problematic, because I can't even trust him in saying if he is who he says he is.
I think that's really what it's all about, is testing that claim of who he is. Is he a truthful
Yeah.
person? If he was honest most of his life and a good person and he taught good things, then yeah, I would believe that he really did see an angel or whatever giving him his revelation. But when you look at the prophecies not coming true, toxic teachings, contradicting disciples and Jesus, that's end game for me. It's like, okay, I can't.
Yeah. And also I believe there was like an incident when there was like a protest and the Roman soldiers were getting involved, and all of a sudden Paul claims his Roman citizenship, and he's like, oh yeah, don't attack me, don't arrest me, because I'm Roman. Like, why would you do that if you're supposed to be one of them? I just
yeah, it's just deception all the time, deceiving people. It's just,
yeah, it's just whatever's convenient for him. And of course, he did get persecuted, he was in prison a lot, like the suffering that he went through, of course that happens. I don't know if all of it was true, but
how do we know?
Yeah,
but
I mean, really the only one who liked him was Luke, from what it sounds like. Luke seems to be the only one that's like, yeah, I'm down with this guy. Everyone else is like, I don't know, he seems all right, but there's a lot of issues with him.
But oh man, it's just, I want to get into a lot more, but it's probably going to go a while. I don't know how much time.
I mean, that's okay. I have whatever time you need. I freed up my night, so because I wasn't sure how long this. Yeah, I was like, I'm ready to talk. Like, I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to like rant about things.
I guess we could separate it. I can't. Maybe I don't know. Just 20 minutes or so, I guess.
Okay.
So how about the resurrection part? So Paul teaches a lot about the resurrection. Jesus is the Lamb of God, and all this. So I don't know if you agree that we should take all of Paul out, right? That would be if you had the option to do it, would you take
Hmm.
Paul's teachings out of the Bible?
Uh,
I mean, he's
I
not.
just I just wish his teachings came after the Gospels. I wish like he hadn't gotten his teachings out yet until after the Gospels were
But
done.
yeah, it did. It was before. So
Yeah, exactly. So it's like we're here, we're already here. Um, uh, I don't know. He says some good stuff. I can't deny that. There are some things that he says where I'm like, that sounds legit. That sounds fine. But him as a whole person, I mean, I know the disciples weren't perfect people either. And like they all made mistakes. They all went through it. But Paul's past, his origins, it just makes it feel so like I can't trust everything that he says anymore. Like I just have to constantly reevaluate everything, and it makes me
yes,
worried.
yeah. If you can't trust one thing, and then you're gonna have to go look through it. Is this true? Is this not? And it's just you can't do that. To me, you can't do that if it's gonna be the word of God. You can't just
Mm,
take some out what you think is good and leave the
and
rest.
leave the
Or
rest, right?
yeah, you can't really
It's
do
like
that.
either you accept it or not, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I think the problem is like that's what's been going on with the translations for centuries.
Yeah,
People have been
yeah,
changing what they wanted to change and like what they thought was bad and keeping what they thought was good. So it's been
is that
happening for a
just with
very
Paul?
long time.
Are you talking about the Gospels as well?
The Gospels as well. I mean, look at the Apocrypha, look at the Maccabees, and their exclusion from today's Bibles. They're seen
Okay.
as like anti-Christian, even though like they were part of the writings for a very very long time from the very beginning.
And who gives these church fathers the right to take things out and put things in?
I mean, they give it to themselves. They give themselves that power.
So how do
The
we know? How do
different
we know that those books are not more legit than the ones you have now?
we don't we don't.
That's
But that's something that evangelicals don't want
isn't
to
that
address.
isn't that hard? I mean, like,
It is. It's very
how do we
hard.
know
It's
if you're
like
getting all the truth, the real truth?
it, I think that's the problem with Christianity and especially with evangelicals because there's like this just refusal to even look at those books because of the way that they are painted in the church. Like, oh, God has preserved his word throughout the years, so only the important things have made it through. But wouldn't it all have been important? They all
Yeah,
seemed to have been important at some point. So who decided that they weren't important anymore, and why can't we see them as important now?
right.
I mean, I already see like I'm not a huge fan of the Old Testament. Like it's kind of scary to read. What more is reading a few more books going to do?
Right. I guess this would be a good time to like kind of put the Islamic spin on it of
Yeah, go ahead.
how we kind of look at it
Mm-hmm.
is with I think I said this before in the last one, but we believe there was a Torah, the Old Testament given
Mm-hmm.
to Moses,
Mm-hmm.
and um, but it's not the same as we have today because, like you said, a lot of things. I mean, that's so old, and it's been uh, people have been copying it and passing it down for centuries. So
Right.
things have been added on and changed. So we can't say that the Torah we have today is the Torah that was actually revealed to Moses. But as Muslims, we
Mm-hmm.
have to believe that there was a Torah given, a revelation given to Moses that wasn't meant to last all of time. It was just meant for that period of people, the Jews for that
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on them to preserve it. It was God put it on them to keep it safe and everything. And they broke that
Mm-hmm.
covenant where the rabbis added things in like
Mm-hmm.
you could um, you could charge interest to a non-Jew, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't do it to a Jew, which obviously that's not something God would
Wow.
say, right? Or about the Isaac and Ishmael thing, like
Mm-hmm.
Isaac being the only
Or being
son.
able to sell your daughter,
That too, like these
you
crazy
know?
things that
Yeah,
that it had to be men putting these things in. So,
absolutely.
and then we go on to Jesus. We believe the gospel, a gospel was given to him
Mhm.
as a messenger
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
God, sent
Mhm.
by God, and he
Mhm.
was given revelation and taught the Torah. So he was taught the real Torah to teach
Mhm.
these rabbis and Jews that were going, making up their own things and being very
Mhm.
arrogant and saying we're the
Mhm.
chosen people, blah blah blah. So
Mhm.
he went to them and he tossed them out the temple for doing the interest and gambling and whatnot. And
Mhm.
he was preaching to them and he was given a gospel. But the Bible we have today, we say same thing, that what you
Mm.
were saying earlier, that people added things on, uh,
Mhm.
and that this dude named Paul came, changed a lot of what Jesus was actually saying and bringing a new religion. We don't like the Quran or nothing doesn't mention Paul at all. He's just a figure. He's just a
Oh.
figure in history that came in,
Mhm.
and there's no really mention of him. All we know is that he's in the New Testament for some reason, and that lots of Christians today are taking Paul as an authority over the real teachings of Jesus, which is
Mhm.
why I really wanted to bring you on. You really, stated that clearly, that Paul is just, you're in agreement with us that he was a deceiver, leading people to do things that are against God's will. So this is
Yeah.
the reason why we believe, and this is where we are probably going to differ, but this is
Mhm.
why we believe there had to be another messenger sent to correct
Mm.
what happened. So to correct,
Oh, I see. I see.
yeah, so to correct Paul and
Mhm.
um, and to correct what the Bible, the gospel was really supposed to be about, right? Which is
Mhm.
worshiping one God, not a Trinity, not
Mhm.
anything else. So
Mhm.
that's why we believe another prophet was sent to clear it up and to
Mhm.
come with a book
Mhm.
that's not going to be changed, right? A book that's
Mhm.
going to last till the end of time, and
Right.
if for all of mankind, including Gentiles, Jews, Christians, whoever, it's for
Mhm.
everyone. And he came.
Mhm.
He's the only prophet to claim that he came for mankind, to every person.
Mm.
So we get our ultimate guidance from that when it comes to salvation, when it comes to all these other issues.
Mhm.
It's all put together in just one book, and then we have also his sayings, the prophet's
Mhm.
sayings,
Mhm.
which are called hadith, and we have a actual science where we can track back the eyewitnesses who witnessed him say these things, and
Mhm.
these are all written down to who
Mhm.
told who told who told who, so we can make it authentic and say he really did say these things, and
Mhm.
we can we have a whole grading system. If it's an authentic hadith or a weak
Mhm.
one, if it's authentic, okay, he really did say this. If it's weak, he probably didn't say that. So
Oh,
that's how
interesting.
we get a guidance and a way of life. And according to the Quran, that Jesus was a messenger, a mighty messenger, and he did do all these things, raising people from the dead, and all these miracles to prove to
Mhm.
the Jews that he was a messenger of God, and they were, how it kind of agrees with the Bible. They were saying that he was
Mhm.
blasphemy, and they
Mhm.
gave all these excuses. They called his
Mhm.
mom, an adulterer, and he was a bastard.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they tried to kill him.
Yeah.
So
Multiple times.
multiple times, and they, not just with him, but they tried to kill prophets before him. I don't know
Yep.
about John. Did John? I've heard. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard they
Which
killed
John?
John. John the Baptist.
Yeah,
Did
he
he
was
get his
beheaded.
head chopped off by the
Yeah,
Jews?
he was. It was by, I want to say, Herod, and it was for his daughter or his wife that I think, like, she wanted his head, and so he like had him decapitated, and like his head was given to her on a platter.
Whoa, that's intense.
It was very intense. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
know that. Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. He was
Yeah. It doesn't say
very
that, and
crazy.
we only have like a small passage about him in the
Oh, okay.
Quran.
Yeah,
So,
he's considered like a harbinger, like announcing that Jesus is coming. I thought you meant like John, from Revelations John,
oh,
because
Revelation
that's a
John.
different John. Yeah, because he died in exile.
Is that the same John as the gospel writer John?
I don't know if John really wrote the book of John. That's the only thing. Like, I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
if he wrote
yeah.
all of it.
I don't
You
think
know what
so
I mean?
either. I'm the
Yeah.
supposed
So,
John. I guess the John
right,
the
right.
disciple. Is that the
Yeah,
same one? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, John the
But John the
disciple.
Baptist is different.
He's different. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're both different. Yeah.
Well, we
Yeah.
believe
John the
he was.
Baptist was wild. He lived in the desert. He ate locusts. He was a wild
Oh,
guy. But
I don't know about
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
All we know is like he's the son of Zechariah. I don't know if you
Yeah,
guys
and
know.
like there's like a direct relation between him and Jesus, like they're
Yeah,
cousins.
yeah, we
Yeah.
believe that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
cousins, and that his mom was barren before.
Hmm.
Same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like they had been wanting to have a child for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah. And
Believe
like
so.
his dad, I think, was blind, and or no, not him.
Oh,
It was a prophet who was blind until, oh, I'm getting it mixed up now. Never mind. Just ignore me. There's so much that happens around that time. It's just like, wow, that's crazy. That's interesting.
so you really read the Bible a lot, huh? Seems like.
I I read it extensively when I was in high school because I was taught, oh, you should get into apologetics because, you need to convert more people and you need to bring more people to church. It was like a lot of pressure in church to bring someone just to get them converted, and like I had to learn how to get them there. It's like an MLM kind of strategy, where you just bring somebody. You don't tell them what
Do
they're,
it.
what they're there for. Just tell them it's for
Wow.
donuts and stuff, like, or if they ask you, just like, here's what you say to them. So I eventually started reading the Bible extensively, and I really got into Revelations because that's
It's
like a
interesting,
whole.
huh?
It's very interesting. Evangelicals love to use Revelations for
Well,
so
they use
many
it.
different things.
Don't they use it to kind of like prove the Bible? Because a lot of things that are prophesized are coming true. Like,
Yeah, they like to say that. But I also see like a different side. I've been reading a different like perspective on it, where it was prophesying the fall of Nero, that Roman emperor.
yeah,
And I have to look into it a little bit more, but I see where they could place all of that. But yeah, you're right. A lot of Christians today like to say like, oh, a lot of these prophecies are coming true. They see as America as Babylon, the new Babylon, and that's why the country is like uh, going down like this. They blame the gay people. They blame abortion for this happening.
oh, it's like a punishment or something because of these
Yeah,
people. Hmm.
yeah, and it's like that's so funny that you think that's the reason why God would punish us, and not the genocide that's happened to the
Exactly.
indigenous people. What happened with all those residential schools and those children's bodies that were found recently in Canada. Like, oh, it's got nothing to do with that. With okay, it's
Yeah,
interesting,
these mass
interesting way.
killings and all this stuff. I
Yeah,
do
like
think there's mass deception that goes on, like um,
oh yes.
just with everything. I mean, even with TV and your phones, there's always like something distracting you from, remembering God and stuff. You're getting, and then you get pulled
Mm,
into things you shouldn't be doing. Like they make it
mm-hmm,
seem like, you know, I don't know what your view on alcohol is, but we're like, for us, you can't drink
mm-hmm.
alcohol like at all.
Okay.
And so they make it seem like, everyone does it, so you have to do it. And it's like
Uh,
you get sucked into these
yeah.
things thinking like it's okay because everyone does it. When um, it's obviously alcohol consumption at a high rate is bad. Like everyone knows that, but yet so many
Yeah.
people do it because they get this little temporary high off it, and they go back to it and they get addicted, kills them, and
Yeah.
makes them
They they drink alcohol instead of going to therapy. Like that's a
exactly
whole other thing. And there's
or
peer
drugs.
pressure involved. Yeah, there's that too. Evangelicals definitely don't like to say that they drink alcohol, especially pastors. They don't say, or let themselves even be pictured near alcohol. I know like my pastor when I was in Rome, he had to like move to a completely different table because people were taking pictures of their food and they had a bottle of wine nearby. And he said, I can't even be seen with this because people are going to assume I'm drinking. And I can't drink. And it's like, oh, okay. Like the image is, it seems like that matters more than just the act of what you were saying of not imbibing at all. I
Yeah.
personally don't drink alcohol as much as I used to, like maybe once every 3 months, if that. And that's just for health reasons. Um, I There's definitely an unhealthy culture surrounding alcohol. I Too many Christians hide the fact that they drink alcohol, and I don't know why. Like, why would you hide that? Like, that's just so dumb. Like we all see it. It's just ridiculous to me.
I mean, it's like
But
I see
like,
their, I guess they try to justify it and stuff. So
yeah, well, I mean, I know they justify it with like the fact that Jesus turned water into wine, and then I believe it's in Psalms or Proverbs where David talks about like drinking, but like not overindulging. Um,
yeah, but it's like
like
I get that, but then you start drinking a little, and it's especially for
right,
the first timer when you're first drinking. Oh, I'm just gonna drink a little bit. And then what happens?
right,
You always end up
absolutely,
drinking more.
absolutely. And it comes down to the fact that we are not raised with discernment. We don't know how to discern very well for ourselves, and we think that we can handle things that we really can't. Um, and I definitely
Yeah,
experienced that with alcohol too. I thought that like, yeah, I'll just drink a little bit, but drinking so much, I get real messy, and I don't want to do that anymore. I
yeah,
make bad decisions when I do that.
exactly. That's
So,
why, yeah, that's why it's
but
like
that's why
strictly.
and I think people just need to go to therapy if they really think that alcohol is an answer for them to feel better.
Or just get more into the religion, like, you know,
Yeah.
just get to find God more, pray more, and like find peace that way. Like if you really get to know what your purpose in life is and get
Mm-hmm.
strict guidance, you start
Mm-hmm.
not to worry about. I'm talking for myself, I guess. I start not to worry about temporary things because you realize this life, everything is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a test, right? So any hardship that comes towards you, it could be a
Mm-hmm.
test from God for you to just get over it and elevate you to a higher status, right? So
Right. I
it's
could see
like
that.
if you put like an analogy like from work, if you want to promote someone to a higher place, you're gonna give them the
Mm-hmm.
hardest tests to go through. Like, can they do this?
Mm-hmm.
Can they do that? And if you're
Yeah.
patient and you go through it and you don't blame God for everything, like a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
do, oh, it's God's fault,
Mm-hmm.
or saying go to the extreme and just say God doesn't exist because bad things happen. It's
Yeah.
like you gotta put that little spin on it and just realize this is a test for you, and it could be that He really loves you and He wants you to elevate your status so you could be promoted in the next life. So
Mm, yeah,
that's
I
how I
could
look at it.
definitely see that. That's something that like I adhere to very strongly. I just like to combine it with the fact that like I need someone to tell me what's going on with me. Like I need someone to help me like, okay, because I deal with mental illness, with like anxiety and depression and some OCD. So my faith goes hand in hand with that, where like I know that there is a reason for what is happening to me, but at the same time, I need someone to help me navigate through what I'm currently feeling. Because these feelings, yeah, they're temporary, but they very much affect my daily life. And if it stops me from being able to function properly, I need someone to help me, get through that so that I can like reach the other side of it and see like, oh, okay, like I can function, and I can, hopefully see what the intent was behind what happened.
Yeah, and yeah, I
That
get that. And therapists are usually very good at pinpointing how or why these
Yeah,
these things are led up to the point where you are now. So
yeah,
I
and it's
would
just to
get
like to help me figure out that stuff, because with my brain, it's I catastrophize very easily, so I need someone to be like, hey, calm down, like let's just disseminate everything and go little by little and figure out what's going on. And that way it helps me like with my faith, looking back and going, oh, I see how that worked out for me, and in my favor, if that makes sense. But I
yeah,
know that's like a lot, it's very hard for a lot of people to accept that what both of us are saying, like
it
with what
is.
you with like world hunger and poverty, and there's a lot of suffering in the world. So I understand why it's an obstacle for people when we say like, oh, God has a purpose for it, or there's a reason behind what's happening to you, like you need to
Yeah.
learn from it. I can see why it's very difficult, and that's
And
why we should help each other like with getting through that.
yeah, definitely. A lot of people can't, especially if you don't believe in God in the first place,
Yeah.
you're not gonna think of it like we do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But well, what I would say to them is they're kind of putting themselves as like they know how they're putting it themselves at the same level as how God thinks, you know. If
Mm-hmm.
God
Like
has,
knowing what God is,
yeah, he has
you
the
know.
total wisdom of everything from past,
Mm-hmm.
future. He knows the
Mm-hmm.
outcomes of things. It could be
Mm-hmm.
something good that you don't even realize. We just
Mm-hmm.
have this little pixel of what's going on. He has like
Mm-hmm.
the full picture of everything. So
Right.
we can't really judge these things that happen that are bad and say God doesn't exist or God hates us all or something like that. Like we don't know. We
Mm,
can't put our wisdom to God. So yeah, bad things are
yeah.
gonna happen and seek help and do what you can, but don't blame God
Yeah.
for all this stuff, you know. Just because bad things
Yeah.
happen doesn't mean God doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And
And I think
unfortunately
it's
that's what
like
happens.
it's blaming God is something that like I definitely struggled with when I was growing up, because I come from a very tough background. Like my childhood was not the best, so there was a lot of blame going there. But I had to at some point realize like it wasn't God directly doing this to me, it was a person doing it to me. And like it can be a part of God's overall plan, but the fact that this person still chose to do what they do, that's their, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes
like
sense. Um,
God can allow things to happen, but ultimately it's the person that's doing the harm that is still
right.
responsible.
Because people are given free will, right? So they're gonna
Yeah.
do sometimes they choose to do evil acts. And
Mhm.
God can't is not gonna he gave us free will for a reason to choose to do
Mhm.
evil or to
Mhm.
do good and all these other things. So if people choose to do evil, that's on them. And they're gonna get
Mhm.
their due diligence later on, right? But
Right.
that's and it's unfortunate that sometimes it happens to good people like us or whatever
Mhm.
that get affected by it. But in the
Mhm.
end it was it can't it's God giving these people free will to do evil. And
Right.
who's to say like through hardships I've been through, maybe hardships that you've been through, it made us who we are today. We wouldn't have
Mhm.
been strong like we are today, speaking about religious topics, and you're very well
Mhm.
spoken and all this. Could be because we went through hardships. If life was just easy
Mm.
and we just went through, la la land, living in a mansion, we'll just be
Yeah.
spoiled little brats somewhere living, not
Yeah.
teaching about religion, not being, well spoken as we are. So I feel
I
like
agree.
yes, we go through hardships and everything, and it's hard at the time. But if we stay strong and patient and we learn from it and
Mhm.
realize it's a test, it could become something that's better for us, that molds us into a person that God wants us to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And it definitely, that what you were saying, like growing up in a mansion and all this stuff, it definitely makes me think of like Jesus' teachings of, to everyone who was rich, like you should just give everything away because you're never gonna, get into heaven like focusing only on money. And
Yeah,
so many people who do focus on money lack such emotional intelligence, and that they can't
yeah.
have conversations like this or even think about these things because they don't go through any